My friend stole my girlfriend and everyone laughed at me for being a loser. I kept quiet. A few months later, she cheated on him with someone else. And he came to me for advice. I just smiled and said, "Karma exists, buddy." My best friend stole my girlfriend, and the entire school laughed at me. But I had the last laugh, and it was nuclear. It all started during my final year of high school. I wasn't the most popular guy, but I wasn't invisible either. I had a small circle of friends, and at the center of it was Daniel, my so-called best friend since childhood. We did everything together. Late-night gaming sessions, skipping class for movies, even covering for each other when things went wrong. I trusted him more than anyone else. And then came Emma. She was smart, beautiful, and funny in that sarcastic way that made me want to argue just so I could hear her laugh. Somehow, don't ask me how, I actually managed to date her. For once in my life, I wasn't the butt of the joke. People looked at me differently, as if I had finally won at something. But Daniel couldn't stand it. He had this hidden envy, this smirk whenever Emma was around. At first, I brushed it off. He was my friend, right? He wouldn't cross the line. But then, one afternoon, I walked into the cafeteria and froze. There he was, Daniel, sitting across from Emma, his hand casually resting over hers. And when she saw me, she didn't even look guilty. She just smirked, like I was the stupid one for not seeing it sooner. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, everyone knew. My best friend had stolen my girlfriend. People whispered behind my back, laughed in the hallways, called me a loser. Some even joked that I should thank Daniel for upgrading my life. I wish I could say I confronted him, yelled at him, punched him in the face. But I didn't. I just stood there, swallowing my rage. And from that silence came the seed of revenge. At first, I thought about simple payback, petty stuff, like spreading rumors or exposing Daniel's embarrassing secrets. But that wasn't enough. He had humiliated me publicly. He had made me look like a fool in front of the entire school. No, if I was going to strike back, it had to be something bigger. Something he would never recover from. So I waited. I played the role of the broken-hearted fool, the abandoned friend. I didn't fight back when people mocked me. I didn't even confront Emma or Daniel. Instead, I let them think they had won. And the longer I stayed quiet, the more careless they became. They flaunted their relationship, posting cringy pictures online, acting like some kind of power couple. But here's the thing. Daniel wasn't as perfect as he pretended to be. I knew things about him. Dark little details he would never want anyone else to know. His grades weren't as spotless as he claimed. His college applications? Full of lies. And Emma. She wasn't exactly loyal, either. I had seen her flirting with guys at parties, even when she was with me. So I started gathering evidence. Screenshots. Messages. A few discreet recordings when Daniel bragged too much. I became invisible, a shadow watching their every move. And the more I collected, the more I realized, I didn't need to hurt them physically. I just had to let them destroy themselves. With a little push from me. The moment came faster than I expected. One night, Emma showed up at a party without Daniel. I stayed in the background, pretending not to notice, until I caught her sneaking upstairs with someone else. I filmed it. Just a few seconds. Enough to prove what she was doing. A week later, Daniel came to me. Yes, the same Daniel who had stolen my girlfriend. He looked miserable, his face pale and broken. Apparently, he had caught Emma texting another guy. He didn't know what to do. He actually sat across from me, his betrayed friend, and asked for advice. That was my moment. My nuclear strike. I leaned back in my chair, fighting the urge to laugh in his face. Instead, I smiled and said just one line, "Karma exists, buddy." And I walked away, leaving him sitting there, realizing that he had lost everything. His girlfriend, his reputation, and the one friend who might have stood by him. So tell me, would you have done the same? Or would you have gone further? Was this justice? Or just the beginning? Daniel thought the nightmare ended when Emma cheated on him. He assumed that the humiliation I had endured months earlier was finally balanced out by karma. What he didn't realize was that his downfall had only just begun. Because while he was crying over a broken relationship, I was busy setting the stage for something much bigger, something he would never see coming. The beauty of revenge is patience. Everyone around me thought I had moved on. I acted like I didn't care, like Daniel's betrayal was just another high school drama that would fade into memory. But behind the scenes, I was preparing. I had collected screenshots of Emma's infidelity, audio clips of Daniel bragging about cheating on assignments, and even copies of his doctored college applications. Yes, he had lied about volunteer work and extracurriculars to make himself look better. I didn't need to fabricate anything. His arrogance had already created the perfect ammunition. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to fire. That moment came during senior year, right before the college admission results were announced. Daniel strutted around school like a king, bragging about how he was definitely getting into Stanford. He mocked everyone else who dared to dream big. And of course, he couldn't resist bringing up my humiliation every chance he got. If I so much as walked into the cafeteria, he would whisper something to Emma's old friends, and they'd laugh. Loser, beta, the guy who couldn't keep his girlfriend, those labels stuck to me like glue. But I smiled through it all. Because deep down, I knew what was coming. I started small. Anonymous emails. One to the school administration, with a polite note and a few attached recordings of Daniel admitting that he cheated on multiple tests. Another to his part-time employer, highlighting screenshots of him mocking customers behind their backs. I wasn't reckless. I made sure it couldn't be traced back to me. But slowly, cracks began to form in his perfect image. Teachers started double-checking his work. His boss started treating him coldly. He was confused, paranoid, but he didn't know why. The real masterpiece, though, was the college application. I had all the evidence of his lies. The fake community service hours, the clubs he never actually attended, the essays he bragged about paying someone else to edit. So I sent a neat, anonymous package to the admissions office of his dream school. It included screenshots, recordings, and even testimonies from people who knew the truth. I didn't ask them to reject him. I simply let them review his honesty. Weeks later, the acceptance letters arrived. While everyone around him was celebrating their futures, Daniel's face turned pale as he read his rejection. Administrative concerns, the letter said. He tried to laugh it off, claiming he didn't care, that he had backup options. But I could see the cracks. His confidence, that smug arrogance that had defined him for years, was starting to crumble. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, Emma came back into the picture. Not to reconcile, oh no, but to publicly humiliate him the way she had once humiliated me. At a party, drunk and bitter, she blurted out the truth. How she had used him to make herself feel important, how she had cheated on him multiple times, and how he was just a rebound for me. The crowd laughed. Phones recorded everything. The next day, the clips spread across social media like wildfire. But here's the twist. Emma thought she was destroying Daniel, but really, she was part of my plan. Because I was the one who had accidentally encouraged her to drink a little more that night, subtly reminding her of the things Daniel had said behind her back. I had planted the seeds, and she delivered the performance. By Monday, Daniel wasn't the king of the school anymore. He was a joke. People whispered about him in the halls, mocked his rejection, replayed Emma's drunken confession. And me. I just walked past him with a smile, as if none of it mattered. That smile ate at him more than anything else. He knew, deep down, that I wasn't just some loser anymore. I was the one who had survived. I was the one pulling the strings. But here's the best part. He still didn't know it was me. To him, it looked like life was simply punishing him. Karma. Coincidence. Bad luck. And I made sure to keep it that way. Because the most satisfying revenge isn't when they know you struck them down. It's when they fall to their knees, begging the universe for mercy, without ever realizing you were the one holding the knife. So tell me, if someone betrayed you the way Daniel betrayed me, would you stop here? Or would you keep going until there was nothing left of him? Daniel's fall from grace at school should have been enough. He lost his girlfriend, his reputation, and his dream college. Most people would have stopped there, content to let karma handle the rest. But me, I wasn't satisfied. Because deep down, I knew Daniel wasn't finished. People like him never truly disappear. They crawl into another circle, reinvent themselves, and wait for their chance to rise again. If I wanted true revenge, I had to make sure he didn't just stumble. I had to make sure he could never get back up. After graduation, I kept tabs on him. Not obsessively. At least, that's what I told myself, but I always seemed to know what he was doing. He ended up at a mediocre state college, far below the level he had bragged about for years. He tried to play it off like it was his choice, like he didn't care about the Ivy League rejection. But the truth leaked through social media posts and the half-hearted photos he shared. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just average. And that ate him alive. Meanwhile, I quietly built my life. I focused on my own studies, took a part-time job, and learned a little about networking. I didn't need to flaunt my progress. I let Daniel underestimate me, the same way he always had. And then, when the opportunity came, I sharpened my knife. The opportunity came in the form of a girl. Ironic, isn't it? Not Emma, she was long gone, drifting from one mistake to another. This was someone new. Sophie, a girl Daniel met during his first semester of college. She was sweet, smart, and, unlike Emma, genuinely kind. For a while, I almost felt guilty watching her fall for him. She didn't deserve what was coming. But I also knew Daniel. He hadn't changed. The lies, the arrogance, the cheating, it was all still there, just hidden under a new mask. Sooner or later, Sophie would become another casualty. Unless I intervened. I didn't approach Sophie directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I befriended people in her circle. Group projects, campus events, casual conversations. I made myself visible, reliable, trustworthy. It didn't take long for her friends to start mentioning me to her. "Oh, he's so dependable," they'd say. "You should talk to him, he really knows his stuff." It was subtle, invisible work. But it laid the foundation. Meanwhile, I gathered more evidence on Daniel. Old habits die hard, and his social media trail was sloppy. Late-night posts, shady texts, even pictures of him at parties with girls who were definitely not Sophie. He wasn't careful. He thought he was untouchable, the same way he always had. That arrogance was my weapon. The real turning point came during finals week. Sophie was stressed, overwhelmed, and Daniel, predictably, was too busy partying to care. That's when I stepped in. I offered her my notes, helped her study, and listened when she vented about how unreliable he was. I didn't trash-talk him. That would have made her defensive. Instead, I let her draw her own conclusions. And when the moment was right, I simply showed her the truth. Screenshots of Daniel's late-night conversations with other girls, the photos of him bragging about keeping his options open. I'll never forget the look on her face. Shock, disbelief, anger, and then heartbreak. She confronted him, of course. And Daniel, true to form, tried to lie his way out of it. But this time, the evidence was undeniable. Sophie dumped him. Publicly. And the whispers began again. Not just in high school this time, but in college. Word spread fast. Daniel, the liar, the cheater, the fraud. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because while Sophie walked away clean, Daniel still thought he could rebuild. He told people she was overreacting, that she was too sensitive. He tried to charm his way back into parties and clubs. And that's when I pulled the next trigger. Remember those fake volunteer hours on his college applications? I still had the proof. And now, I sent it, not to Stanford this time, but to his current college's academic integrity board. Anonymous, of course. A neat little packet of evidence, complete with timestamps, screenshots, and testimonies. They opened an investigation. And when Daniel was called in, he panicked. His reputation as a hard-working student evaporated overnight. Professors looked at him differently. His peers whispered behind his back. He was on academic probation before the semester even ended. And me. I was there in the background, always smiling, always supportive, always invisible. No one suspected a thing. To them, Daniel was just unlucky. To him, it was the universe punishing him again. But I knew the truth. I was the universe now. The best part? He still didn't know it was me. And that ignorance made every step of his downfall even sweeter. So, what do you think? Was I too cruel for taking it this far, or not nearly cruel enough? Daniel's college years should have been the end of my grudge. By then, I had everything I wanted. He was disgraced, dumped, and drowning in academic trouble. Most people would have moved on. But Daniel wasn't most people. He still strutted around like the world owed him something, clinging to scraps of his old arrogance. And that arrogance fueled me. I realized then, his punishment wasn't complete until he carried the weight of his betrayal into adulthood, where no amount of excuses or charm could save him. After probation, Daniel scraped by and eventually graduated. Barely. His transcript was a mess, but he somehow landed a sales job at a mid-sized company. Typical. He wasn't smart enough for something serious, but he was charismatic enough to convince people he could talk his way into success. And to be fair, he did well for a while. Social media showed him in suits, holding overpriced cocktails, bragging about closing deals, and living the high life. It was pathetic, like a child playing dress-up, but people bought it. His followers grew, and slowly, his reputation started to recover. That's when I decided to step back into his life. Not directly, of course. That would have ruined everything. Instead, I watched from the sidelines, waiting for an opening. And the opening came when he joined a professional networking group in the city, the same group I had quietly become a member of years earlier. He didn't even recognize me at first. I had changed, sharper suit, better confidence, a calmness he'd never seen in me before. To him, I was just another face in the crowd, another ambitious young professional. Perfect. I didn't approach him. I let him notice me. Humans are predictable that way. If you stand just close enough, they get curious. And sure enough, one evening, he walked over at a mixer and said, "Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?" The smirk was still there, but it was weaker now, almost defensive. I gave him a polite smile, shook his hand, and said, "Yeah, high school. Long time ago." And then I walked away. That tiny move set the stage. Because in his head, it wasn't over. He needed to prove he was still above me. Over the next few months, I made sure our paths kept crossing. Always casual, always professional. I let him brag about his success in front of me, watched him embellish stories about deals he supposedly closed. But behind the scenes, I dug deeper. And what I found was delicious. His resume was just as fake as his old college applications. He had exaggerated numbers, invented leadership roles, even claimed credit for projects that weren't his. Worse, he was cutting corners at work, over-promising to clients, manipulating contracts, and pocketing little bonuses under the table. It was only a matter of time before the truth caught up to him. But why wait? I started feeding small pieces of information to the right people. A concerned client sent an anonymous email about Daniel's shady practices. A former colleague dropped a hint to HR about inconsistencies in his resume. At first, nothing happened. He was still the golden boy. But slowly, things began to shift. Clients grew suspicious. HR started reviewing files. His boss pulled him aside for private discussions. And through it all, I stayed close enough to watch him sweat, but far enough that he never suspected me. The real strike came during a corporate event. Daniel was giving a presentation in front of senior executives, bragging, as usual, about his record-breaking deals. What he didn't know was that I had already sent the board copies of the real numbers, proving he had inflated everything. Halfway through his speech, the CEO interrupted, asking him to clarify a few details. Daniel stumbled, tried to spin it, but the questions kept coming. The room grew colder. And then, the hammer dropped. The CEO revealed that an internal audit had already begun. The color drained from Daniel's face as everyone in the room realized he was a fraud. He was suspended within the week. By the end of the month, he was fired. His LinkedIn went silent. His Instagram, once full of champagne and selfies, was suddenly deactivated. People whispered, speculated, laughed. The rising star had burned out spectacularly. And me. I kept my distance, watching his empire of lies collapse yet again. But here's the thing. This wasn't even the end. Because Daniel still had one more weakness I hadn't touched yet. One thing that could shatter him completely beyond repair. His family. So tell me, if you were me, would you go after that last weakness? Or would you finally stop and let him crawl away into obscurity? Daniel's downfall in the corporate world should have ended the story. He had lost his job, his reputation, and his carefully crafted image. Most people in my shoes would have walked away, content with watching their old enemy drown in his own lies. But I wasn't most people. Because Daniel still had something left. Something that gave him the illusion of stability. His family. On the surface, they were the perfect suburban household. His parents were respected in the community. His younger sister was a straight-A student, and Daniel was supposed to be their golden boy, the son who would bring honor to the family name. But the truth was much darker. His father had invested heavily in Daniel's career, bragging to neighbors about his success, and his mother constantly defended him as misunderstood. They enabled him, excused him, and in doing so, made him even more arrogant. If Daniel was going to truly understand what he had done to me, he needed to lose the only people who still believed in him. I didn't need lies to do it. The truth was more than enough. Years of screenshots, recordings, resumes, and failed projects. I compiled everything into a neat little dossier. His fake grades, his cheating scandals, his workplace fraud, even Emma's betrayal and Sophie's heartbreak. Every disgusting, humiliating detail of his life laid out like an autopsy report. And then, one quiet evening, I mailed it directly to his parents' house. No return address. No explanation. Just the truth, printed and undeniable. The fallout was immediate. His father confronted him first, furious that the investment he had poured into his son's career had been based on lies. His mother cried, torn between defending him and facing reality. His sister, the one person he adored, looked at him with disgust. Neighbors who once praised the family started whispering. Their golden boy was exposed, and the shame wasn't just his anymore. It tainted them all. Daniel moved out within weeks. His family didn't disown him officially, but the distance was clear. No more bragging from his father. No more doting from his mother. No more pride from his sister. He was on his own, stripped of everything. And yet, he still tried to crawl back. He took odd jobs, made new social media accounts, tried to reinvent himself as some kind of self-made entrepreneur. I could have ignored it. I could have let him fade into obscurity. But every time I saw his pathetic attempts to rebuild, I remembered the cafeteria years ago, him holding Emma's hand, smirking at me while everyone laughed. That image was burned into my brain, and it demanded one final act. So I became his shadow again. Quiet, unseen, always watching. Whenever he applied for a new job, I made sure HR received an anonymous warning with proof of his fraud. Whenever he tried to network, I leaked stories of his lies. Whenever he tried to date, I made sure his new partner learned about his history. One by one, every door slammed shut in his face. The last time I saw him was by accident. I was leaving a restaurant downtown when I noticed a figure sitting alone on the curb. It took me a moment to recognize him. Daniel. He looked nothing like the arrogant boy I once knew. His suit was wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes hollow. He didn't notice me at first. He was staring at the ground, muttering to himself, as if trying to piece together where it all went wrong. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I walked past him, paused, and said quietly, "I told you, Daniel. Karma exists." He looked up, eyes wide, but I was already gone. That was the last chapter. My revenge was complete. He had taken everything from me once. My girlfriend, my dignity, my reputation. And in return, I had taken everything from him. Not with fists. Not with threats. But with patience, precision, and truth. People say revenge doesn't heal you. Maybe they're right. But standing there, watching him broken and alone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. So now I'll ask you, if someone betrayed you like Daniel betrayed me, would you have gone this far? Would you have destroyed not just the person, but their entire world? Or would you have let karma do the work?